Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG show for Wednesday, November the 24th, 2021. Another day, another verdict. This is from Ross Bynum at the Associated Press. 3 men were convicted of murder Wednesday in the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, the black man who was running empty-handed through a Georgia subdivision when the white strangers chased him, trapped him on a quiet street, and blasted him with a shotgun. The February 2020 slaying drew limited attention at first, but when video of the shooting leaked online, Arbery's death quickly became another example in the nation's reckoning of racial injustice in the way Black people are treated in their everyday lives. Now the men all face a mandatory sentence of life in prison. The judge will decide whether their sentences are served with or without the possibility of parole. As the first of 23 guilty verdicts were read, Arbery's father had to leave the courtroom after leaping up and shouting. At the reading of the last criminal count, Arbery's mother dropped her head and quietly pumped her fists. "He didn't do nothing but run and dream," Marcus Arbery Sr. said of his son. Outside the courtroom, dozens of Black supporters hugged and cried. The jury deliberated for about 10 hours before convicting Greg McMichael, son Travis McMichael, and neighbor William Roddy Bryan. The McMichaels grabbed guns and jumped in a pickup truck to pursue the 25-year-old Arbery after seeing him running outside the Georgia port city of Brunswick. Bryan joined the pursuit in his own pickup and recorded cell phone video of Travis McMichael fatally shooting Arbery. The father and son told police they suspected Arbery was a fleeing burglar, but the prosecution argued that the men provoked the fatal confrontation and that there was no evidence Arbery committed any crimes in the neighborhood. It seems to me, well, bear in mind, as I said last week, that one verdict cannot be said to represent anything particularly significant about the criminal justice system. But the United States has devolved to a country now where there is tremendous pressure on every jury to come up with the right verdict, lest angry Black people burn down a city. And that is unsupportable, absolutely unsupportable. But wait, here comes President Brandon to pour gasoline on this fire. This is from Michael Lee at Fox News. President Biden weighed in on the guilty verdicts in the Ahmaud Arbery case, celebrating the verdict while warning the country still had work to do to achieve racial justice. Ahmaud Arbery's killing, witnessed by the world on video, is a devastating reminder of how far we have to go in the fight for racial justice in this country, Biden said in a statement Wednesday. Arbery should be here today celebrating the holidays with his mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, and his father, Marcus Arbery. Nothing can bring Arbery back to his family and to his community, but the verdict ensures that those who committed this horrible crime will be punished. Aside from the fact that I don't know that President Brandon could describe what racial justice means, but he really seems to be egging on a race war in the United States. What can we learn from the Ahmaud Arbery case? ABA, always be avoiding. Just, if there's someone who claims to be a jogger who is running around on a hot summer's day dressed in a parka, yes, just ignore him. Ignore him. Just ignore as much as is possible, because you don't want to spend the rest of your life in prison if something goes bad. I suppose you could call the police, but that would open you up to charges of being a Karen. And while you wouldn't spend the rest of your life in prison, you might well be fired from your job and socially destroyed. So ABA. This is from Steve Watson of Summit News. White House Press Secretary Jen, not Jennifer, but Jen Psaki, was asked Tuesday if Joe Biden will ever apologize for labeling Kyle Rittenhouse a white supremacist before he was even afforded the opportunity to prove himself innocent. Psaki doubled down on Biden's defamation and fell back on the tired excuse that it was all President Trump's fault. During the press briefing, Fox News reporter Peter Doocy asked Psaki, will the president ever apologize to Kyle Rittenhouse for suggesting that he is a white supremacist? Psaki told Doocy that Rittenhouse took the law into his own hands. No, he didn't. He defended himself from being killed. Psaki attempted to spin the question, saying the context was a campaign ad that used President Trump's own words as he refused to condemn white supremacists and militia groups. She added, President Trump, as we know from history, and as many of you covered, didn't just refuse to condemn militia groups on the debate stage, he encouraged them throughout his presidency, unquote. No, that's another lie. Trump did specifically condemn them multiple times. Trump issued a statement condemning KKK, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, and other hate groups that are repugnant to everything we hold dear as Americans. Doocy pointed out that it wasn't just a campaign ad and that Biden made comments comparing Rittenhouse to white military extremists in an interview with CNN. In August 2020, Biden said, I don't know enough to know whether that 17-year-old kid exactly what he did. That didn't stop him from plowing forward, adding, allegedly, he's part of a militia coming out in the state of Illinois. Have you heard the president say one negative thing about white supremacists? Have you ever heard it? Psaki deflected and refused to comment any further. Watson says Rittenhouse should sue the hell out of her, too. President Brandon is now being compared to Ron Burgundy because he will read anything off the teleprompter, including end of quote. Didn't he previously read something on the teleprompter that said something like, leave the stage now? Okay. So also weighing in on this issue is someone called Dr. Stacey Patton. I wouldn't guess that she's a physician. Let's see how her website describes her. Dr. Stacey Patton is an adoptee, child abuse survivor, and former foster youth turned award-winning author, journalist, and child advocate. Child abuse survivor. That's the sort of thing that one boasts about now. Her reporting on issues of child welfare, race relations, and higher education has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Baltimore Sun, Al Jazeera, BBC News, TheRoot.com, the Chronicle of Higher Education, ForHarriet.com, and Dame Magazine. She has made appearances on CNN, MSNBC, Al Jazeera, Fox, CBS, and Democracy Now! Dr. Patton has won numerous journalism awards and citations from the William Randolph Hearst Foundation, Society of Professional Journalists, National Association of Black Journalists, Scripps Howard Foundation, New York Women in Communications, and the Education Writers Association. In 2015, Dr. Patton was awarded the Vernon Jarrett Medal for her national commentary and reporting on race. As a nationally recognized child advocate, Dr. Patton travels the country delivering keynotes and professional trainings focused on combating racial disparities in child abuse cases, criminal prosecutions for child abuse, foster care placements, the overprescribing of psychotropic medications to children of color in foster care, etc., etc., etc. And it very much seems that this woman wants a race war in the United States. White people are evil. Full stop. They're evil. And apparently white women are even more evil because they give birth, yes, to white men. Yes. This is originally from a site unfamiliar to me called Madame Noir, and it was reprinted by Yahoo News. Kyle Rittenhouse is proof that white women birth white supremacy while black mothers birth its victims. Again, I will have to point out that Kyle Rittenhouse killed two men in Kenosha and wounded another. They were not black, they were white. But somehow this is an anti-black crime because Rittenhouse desecrated a Black Lives Matter riot there. Dr. Patton begins. Donald Trump's election in 2016 was a murder-suicide note to America. Since then, we've witnessed angry and disoriented white males across the nation boldly trying to fulfill that pact while using Karen tears to blame others for their circumstances and crimes. Yes, the fabled white fragility, which is absolutely hilarious, coming from people like Dr. Stacey Patton, who burst into tears and shout imprecations against white supremacy every time they break a shoelace. She continues, in this perilous ecosystem of hate, we saw thousands of snarling white faces and heard the sonic horrors of their medieval-esque, not just medieval, but medieval-esque howls as they erected effigies, a guillotine, and a hanging gallows outside the U.S. Capitol during the January 6th insurrection. We've heard the shrill calls of lawmakers who have been exploiting white America's insecurities by telling them that the country has left them behind and urging them to resist tyranny by taking up arms to overthrow the government. Remember, Senator Lindsey Graham said it out loud, the demographics race we're losing badly. We're not generating enough angry white guys to stay in business for the long term. In other words, if white men don't cheat, steal, rape, control, or kill the loose bodies of non-white people, the future of whiteness is in peril. I can hear their clarion call, yeehaw, grab your guns, boys, batten down the hatches, destroy this whole goddamn earth if you have to, leave nothing behind for them colors and N-word lovers. Yes, she actually wrote this. Yeah, she actually wrote that. I didn't change anything. Republican lawmaker joked about hitting a Congressman Nancy Pelosi in the head with a gavel. Another GOP representative recently shared an anime video depicting himself stabbing Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez with a sword and attacking President Biden. We know that hate groups and assorted militias have been stockpiling weapons for a coming race war. The alt-right, what is this, 2017? Has bluntly told white America that the restoration of racial superiority, the ruptured white family, its economic faltering, declining birth rates, and life expectancy can be ameliorated by cleansing the nation of inferior racialized competitors. And again, who racialized them? White nationalists and vigilantes have been encouraged by the repeated acquittals of cops killing unarmed Black people. We've witnessed corrupt law enforcement and the courts coddle histrionic white males as they continue their power grab by any means necessary while marching toward obsolescence. Last week's acquittal of teenage vigilante Kyle Rittenhouse is the most recent example of a deceitful, petulant narcissist who got caught committing a crime and then appropriated the language of oppression to paint himself as the victim. Actually, Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty on all the counts he was charged with. But no, according to Dr. Stacey Patton, he got caught committing a crime. So many folks are shocked, upset even, over the outcome of the Rittenhouse trial. I watched the verdict with my face frozen in permanent neutrality. Yes, I bet. Just another day of whiteness in America. But as usual, the punditocracy has been focusing on the melodramatics of Rittenhouse's tears and parsing out the details of the case to death, rather than candidly issuing a stern and urgent warning that we are marching into some very dark times. Yes, and who is the drum majorette here? Well, I guess that would be Dr. Stacey Patton. The Rittenhouse acquittal says that we are living in an era of peak white male victimization. Again, who is it in America that is most complaining about being victimized, who never shut up about it? Dr. Patton continues, and when white men are afraid, everybody is in danger. The vigilantes and racists have been further emboldened by the outcome of this case. Welcome to a white supremacist theocracy that is regressing back to its barbaric, prehistoric impulses. Wow. So white people are not only evil, they are prehistoric, troglodytes, perhaps. Rittenhouse's display of tearless crying is a symbol of white male grievance and a familiar code of white desperation, defiance, and rage in a historical moment of dangerous tumult. As a black woman in America, I'm so bored by pathetic displays of white men's angst, bluster, and self-pity. That's why you never shut up about it. These nitwits can cry a fetid river and baptize waterboard or drown themselves in it for all I care. White male tears are a political tactic similar to the one many white women weaponize to muster sympathy and avoid accountability. What I see is saltiness over the intergenerational failure of white supremacy being passed on to their youth is racial resentment and a mandate for racial redemption. Intergenerational failure, but wait a minute. She has been arguing up to this time that the race war is going to start because all these white vigilantes have been stockpiling weapons. And now she tells us that there is an intergenerational failure of white supremacy. Well, Rittenhouse is only 18 years old. So if he is a white supremacist, of course he isn't, then that would certainly indicate that in his case, there's been no failure in that respect. These degenerates cry because they can't believe they don't have a free pass for their criminal behavior like the good old days of yore. They want an all-powerful protector like Donald Trump, Dylan Roof, Darren Wilson, Derek Chauvin, and the three rednecks who lynched Ahmaud Arbery to bring back the days when mediocre white men had impunity to be racist and keep black people out of competition for jobs and resources and to humiliate us in the process. There's no understanding here. I suspect that if you told Dr. Stacey Patton about affirmative action, she would actually refuse to believe it. And they need man boys like Rittenhouse to strap up and kill because the future of white supremacy can only be secured by their criminality. That's why he's the new hero of the far right. That's why 3 House Republicans have offered him an internship. Don't get me started on the white mothers who raised their sons to kill people. Officer Derek Chauvin's mom watched the same video as millions of us who saw her son kneeling on George Floyd's neck for 8 minutes, 46 seconds. She watched him kill a man who was pleading for his life and calling for his mama, and she still called him a good man, honorable and selfless, and talked about how proud she was of him at his sentencing. Rittenhouse's mother defended him, even though he was a minor illegally in possession of a gun, untrue, and out past an emergency curfew. Oh, and what about all of the revelers, the Black Lives Matter revelers, burning Kenosha down? But they were righteous and, most important, not white. And so they weren't breaking any laws. Quite frankly, she should have been brought up on charges. What, the charge of being white? Meanwhile, black mothers and fathers have had to endure slander, attacks on their parenting, and debates about whether their unarmed children playing in parks or walking home from the store deserved to die. Rittenhouse is a young man who was destroyed as a boy by a toxic white supremacist culture, but you were just arguing that it failed intergenerationally, that proclaims victimization by the left, the liberal media, Me Too, feminism, political correctness, immigrants, and uppity black people. I say this all the time. The public doesn't want to be told there is something wrong with the so-called normal white family that is raising white boys like Rittenhouse to internalize racism, coercion, and violence. This is why we have no real insight into the violence we see in the news. Then why are you talking about it, Dr. Patton? It's not just toxic masculinity or gun culture, which are treated like viruses communicated in schools and workplaces. What does that even mean? Behind all this stands the white family with all its unspoken violence. If we're serious about understanding why young white men can become so violent, we need to take a serious look at how they are being raised. The coercive parenting and socialization of white boys is central to understanding white supremacy and violence, and we need to develop policies around containing that violence. Let me also say that I'm tired of hearing black folks ask unnecessary rhetorical questions. What if Rittenhouse was black? What if the Capitol rioters were black? We've been in this racist country for over 400 years. Y'all, yes, she actually wrote y'all know the damn answer. They would have been shot to black Jesus. In the Rittenhouse trial, what we witnessed yet again is how the legal presumption of innocence, historically reserved for white adults, was extended to a white youth. He received the fullest protection of the law, not because folks viewed him as a scared kid who made a foolish mistake by shooting 3 people with a weapon of war, but because he is a quasi-adult who represents the future of whiteness. Again, you were telling us about how the white supremacy had failed to be transmitted intergenerationally. As such, he had to be acquitted. Once you understand what white supremacy requires to sustain itself and secure its future, you'll be less shocked and upset over its contradictions and evil. Some of our people keep talking about tuning out the news cycle so they don't have to be stressed out by these horrible stories. Your silenced, closed eyes, or diverted attention will not keep you safe. Our churches that keep telling us to pray and offer absolution for our oppressors will not save us. The federal government is feckless. Even though the George Floyd Justice and Police Act died in Congress after months of protests featuring legions of white folks tearing up shit and playing dead in the streets. What? Far too many of us still have a possessive investment that we can win simple justice from a system that has been serial killing us for generations. We cannot live in fear. We can't waste our time trying to empathize with, understand, pray for, reform, or understand these embodied descendants of colonizers. What we are witnessing is the culmination and crystallization of decades of frustration that's been brewing in white America since the civil rights movement. Dr. Stacey Patton concludes, as we approach these even darker times, I take solace in knowing that gun ownership among Black Americans, especially Black women, is skyrocketing. Black women are now the fastest growing gun ownership demographic in America. We need to be prepared to defend ourselves, our families, and communities against this rising tide of white nationalist violence. So apparently, Yahoo, which I gather is a major telecommunications company of some sort located in Silicon Valley, is endorsing a race war. It's endorsing a race war. And oh, yes, here's this righteous woman who has done very well for herself by complaining how Black people, especially Black women, have no chance of succeeding in America. Whereas everyone knows that if you howl long and loud enough, job offers and speeches, paid speeches will be, and book contracts will be given to you. Again, this situation is unsustainable. Let's have a look at the chat. Okay, hello to Yo Mama, No Sleep Till Breezewood, Pennsylvania, Head McNeck. Happy real Thanksgiving, Kevin. Isn't that tomorrow? I believe. I'll have something on that later. Hello to Enron. Actually, there was an SCTV bit about, America has a Thanksgiving, Canada has a Thanksgiving. And this was it was from CanFacts, the Bureau of Canadian Facts. And obviously the Canadian Thanksgiving is better than the American Thanksgiving because it comes earlier in the year. Hello to Dan and William Hicks. Good evening from I-75 South heading toward Cincinnati, Ohio. Hello to Chokokin 666 and Palcaso 88. Head McNeck says these people don't know what a real reckoning is. British American says if that which is only submission to necessity should be made the object of choice, the law is broken, nature is disobeyed, and the rebellious are outlawed, cast forth, and exiled from this world of a fruitful penitence into the antagonist world of madness, vice, confusion, and unavailing sorrow. That is from Edmund Burke's Reflections on the Revolution in France, brought to us by British American. Oscar Toe, hello. Biden is having Thanksgiving at some billion-dollar compound in Nantucket. Dan says Brandon is the new Manson. Yes, Manson had evolved this bizarre theory that the Beatles song Helter Skelter was some sort of coded message for a race war. And after the blacks and whites had pummeled each other enough, then Manson and his gang would come out of the Spawn Ranch and take over the world. No Sleep Till Breezewood says, I hope that Matt Walsh gets reminded that he asked for this. Please explain. Yes, okay. Hello to Virtual Pilgrim. People act as if white supremacy is the worst thing ever. My response would be, so what? Matt Beck says, I used to think Biden had some evil plan, and now I realize that he's literally an empty suit, has been for 50 years, and doesn't have a thought in his head. Palcasso88 says, will Russia invade Ukraine? I would bet against it myself. But again, I don't make short-term bets like that. That overprescribing bit is peak allowed discussion of un-PC issue by making it a white issue, says No Sleep. Let's see. Hello to Dionysus. Old Major says the guys shot by Kyle were also special, like Binger and the other prosecutor. We have a class of nonfiction writers who just can't write fiction in op-eds because they can't write an actual book, says No Sleep. Chogahan666 says it's always 1953 Mississippi. I'm sorry, but who is teaching white children that they are evil, says Dionysus. Oscar Toe says this writer deserves a Pulitzer, and Enron says there is no living with people like this. No, there is not. Hello to Moral Outrage Prophet. And John S., you'd think they'd back off the relentless assaults if they actually thought they might have to answer for it. Chokahan666, the guy was a criminal lunatic off his meds and grabbed a guy's shotgun by the muzzle. Okay. Okay, hello to Denny McDonald. And Anron says, on a certain level, this lunatic is just writing all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy over and over. Yes. Did you like the bit about the fetid river? That's how corrupt white people are, that their tears are polluted. Let's see. Metal Mike says in Ontario, they were giving out cool grab bags of toys for kids who get jabbed. I said happy real Thanksgiving tonight because by showtime tomorrow, someone else might have beat me to it. Manson got a copy of the CD remastered, didn't he? Asked Metal Mike. I don't know about that. No Sleep says when the Arbery thing first happened, Matt Walsh proclaimed on Twitter that he hoped the defenders would get punished. Oh, I see. Okay. Ashley Main Bravo, Prince Philip quote about reincarnating as a deadly virus to solve overpopulation resurfaces. Okay. Dr. Dendame says KMG has always addressed me by my proper title of doctor. And let's go to the New York Post and Lee Brown. I should congratulate my old colleague, Kelly Jane Torrance, who was just announced to be the new op-ed editor of the New York Post. She's certainly come a long way from Alberta Report. The ex-con charged over the deaths of 6 people at a Wisconsin Christmas parade shared social media posts calling for violence against white people and suggesting Hitler was right for killing Jews. Well, apparently Hitler knew who the real Jews were, which I gather are blacks. Yes. Darrell Brooks Jr., who has a decades-long rap sheet, shared a series of disturbing memes and messages on social media, most of which have been deleted since his arrest for Sunday's deadly carnage. They included numerous posts attacking cops, comparing them to KKK members and calling them violent street gangs, as well as calling for violence toward white people, according to screenshots. Learned ND taught behavior, he wrote on June the 9th last year amid the violent upheaval over George Floyd's murder by a Minnesota cop. So when we start back knocking white people TF out, I want to hear it. The old white people too. What language is this written in? This was written under his rap name, Math Boy Fly. And I'm looking at the booking photo of Darrell Brooks Jr., and he definitely has a Manson vibe. No question. In 2015, Brooks also shared a disturbing anti-Semitic meme that appeared to align with the beliefs of the Black Hebrew Israelites. Yes. And since this story is mostly cribbed from a story in the Daily Mail, why not go to the source? This is a story by Karen Ruiz and Jennifer Smith from the Mail. And again, the Mail is a newspaper which likes to print news that other organizations, ostensibly news organizations. They're not really much interested in news these days. He also shared an article from ESPN that same day about NBA player Kyle Kuzma breaking down his belief of what white privilege, to which Brooks commented, "Interesting." Brooks had also shared a post about a white cop being violent towards peaceful protesters 6 days earlier. Brooks' troubling track record has raised questions about his alleged motives for the killings and why he had been allowed on the streets. Among the brow-raising social media posts that surfaced Tuesday was a meme about Adolf Hitler and the identity of the real Jews. This is November 15, claimed Negroes are the true Hebrews and that America had moved false white Jews into a state of Israel. Okay, so this fellow is demonstrably insane. I have run across these black Hebrew Israelites, and I must say that I was impressed that they can talk for like 10 minutes straight. No pauses, no interruptions. It's just the spiel. It goes on and on and on. Impressive. Brooks made his initial appearance in court Tuesday. He could be heard crying during the proceeding, leaning over with his head neatly in his lap, with his attorney resting a hand on his back. Okay. Yes, the lawyer was felt very sorry for him because poor Darrell Brooks Jr. has been through a lot. I wonder whether there will actually be an attempt by the elite to rehabilitate this fellow, perhaps along the lines of, as a black man in America, and judging by his many interactions with a corrupt white supremacist justice system, had been unfortunately radicalized, and of course, it's all the fault of white people. Yeah. Madame Noir, indeed. And where are we going to go now? Oh, yes. Okay. Apologizing. Apologizing is very popular these days, perhaps more popular than it's ever been. And how about apologizing for anything and everything? This is from Kane at Citizen Free Press. The Women's March. And what is the Women's March? Oh, I've gone to their Twitter page, and it says 4 years of resistance, 4 years of training, 4 years of building power. Together, we will take the power back. Well, there's a self-proclaimed feminist in the White House, and Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House. It seems like you people have the power these days. Anyway, the Women's March tweeted, "This is for real. It's not fake. It's not a troll. We apologize deeply for the email that was sent today. $14.92 was our average donation amount this week. It was an oversight on our part to not make the connection to a year of colonization, conquest, and genocide for indigenous people, especially before Thanksgiving." Ari Fleischer responded, "Let's all chip in and raise the amount to $17.76. Then they'd really lose their minds." Oh my God, these numbers are traumatizing people. The New York Post was the newspaper that broke the Hunter Biden laptop story, which happened just before the election, which might, in other circumstances, have changed a lot of votes. But instead, the media, the rest of the media, with the honorable exception of the Daily Mail, decided to enter into a quick conspiracy, not only to suppress that news, but also to claim falsely that this was a Russian disinformation campaign. Emmett Joe Morris has a story at Breitbart. The Biden family was set to benefit from a deal to transfer American natural gas to Chinese energy company CEFC through a prospective 2017 deal by Hunter and Jim Biden, according to newly uncovered documents, as the Biden administration now massively scales back United States energy production. Documents never previously reported on from the infamous laptop from hell belonging to Hunter show the Biden scion was working on a deal in 2017 to transfer liquid natural gas from Louisiana to CEFC, the same Chinese firm with which Hunter also discussed a business venture that would have 10% held by H for the big guy meaning dad. But the deal never materialized. That wouldn't stop the Chinese players in the deal, however, from going on to push Hunter to help his father mount a bid for president years after. In an email from October 23, 2017, an intermediary by the name of Zhao Qibao between Hunter Biden and his Chinese business associates sent an email thanking Hunter and Joe Biden's brother Jim for arranging a meeting with Greg Michaels, the president of a natural gas liquefaction facility in Louisiana called Monkey Island LNG, and detailing plans for what will be discussed. Leveraging the family name to secure high-profile meetings for foreign clients was not just a good deal for Hunter and Jim Biden. It has previously been reported by the New York Post that Hunter was responsible for family expenses, with Hunter once telling his daughter that he has to pay for everything for this entire family. The Post reported in July, I hope you all can do what I did and pay for everything for this entire family for 30 years. This is in a 2019 text message to his daughter, Naomi. It's really hard, but don't worry. Unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary. And again, the election campaign last year revealed that not only that Joe Biden was senile and cowardly, pretty much basically refusing to campaign, he's corrupt as hell. But that's not information that the American people really needed to know. Or so that's the position that the regime media took. And this is a story from Paul Bedard at the Washington Examiner. When it comes to inflation under President Joe Biden, the liberal media and the Democrats have decided to look away or find excuses for why it's okay to pay 60% more for heating fuel, 29% more for eggs, and 57% higher gas prices. While complaining about higher prices used to be a universal right, partisanship is weighing in more than before. The latest evidence is a new Trafalgar Group survey showing that while a majority of respondents feel forced to change holiday plans due to rising prices, Democrats seem giddy over opening their wallets wider. The survey found that more people are cutting back, 52% compared to 48%, because of rising prices of gas and groceries. But when Democrats, Republicans, and independents are examined as separate groups, a huge gulf appears. Among Democrats, 71.2% said they are making few or no changes to their holiday plans due to higher prices. Among Republicans, though, 73.4% are changing plans, as well as 58.4% of independent voters. The Democratic spin has been that the policies from Biden, who is jetting to exclusive Nantucket for Thanksgiving, are putting extra cash in the pockets of taxpayers, so inflation isn't an issue. For example, the Democratic Party on Tuesday said, thanks to President Biden's leadership, the American people have some relief. It cited Biden's move to ease the supply chain crisis and tap the strategic oil reserve, with neither leading to price cuts. Then there's the media echo chamber backing up the Democrats. On Monday, an NBC reporter suggested families replace their turkey with pasta as a reasonable cut to afford Thanksgiving. Another said they should use heavier curtains to keep energy costs low. MSNBC's Stephanie Rule urged the nation to keep it all in perspective. The Media Research Center Newsbusters team pulled together some of the best examples of the media's effort to cover for the administration, including this from MSNBC's Joy Reid. The economy isn't bad. It's just that people are mad because everything is late and things cost a little bit more. On the other side was Shark Tank investor Kevin O'Leary, whose nickname in Canada, where he comes from, is Lebanese Scrooge, who said on CNBC that people are pissed about inflation. I don't have a better word than saying that. They're unhappy. My employees are unhappy. They're going to vote with the cost of bread. You know, I believe it was last year that there was a commercial for this exercise bike called Peloton, in which a woman, presumably a wife, became tearful when her husband gave her one for Christmas. And this was deemed to be an outrage, an absolute outrage. Oh, is hubby saying that she's she's overweight, that she needs to be fitter? No, no, obviously he wasn't, because the woman wouldn't have got teary-eyed at getting a Peloton machine unless she was an avid exerciser. So for Christmas this year, Peloton is running an ad I find disturbing. They show Ebenezer Scrooge, and he hates Christmas. And so, but then he has a Peloton machine, and we see him working out and getting fit. And then the payoff is that he's kinder to people. No, there's no payoff, none whatsoever. So apparently, Ebenezer Scrooge can still hate Christmas and hate society. But so long as he's fit, then that's enough. And I don't know. I don't know how this got through, but it is very amusing indeed. This is a story by Alex Thompson about Pete Buttigieg. And of course, everyone loves Pete Buttigieg now. You know that he's a gay dad? Yeah. Everyone loves that, right? And of course, forget Kamala Harris, Kamala Shamala. Pete Buttigieg, he's the future of the Democratic Party. They just made this up out of whole cloth about 2 weeks ago. Oh, yes, everyone's talking about Pete Buttigieg. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. But now they are talking about Pete Buttigieg because the regime media has decided that they are going to manufacture consent. But here we go. This is the actual headline at Politico. The Buttigieg presidential buzz has penetrated the White House. Yes, penetrated the White House. Yes, I suspect that they had a lot of fun coming up with that headline and then seeing it printed. Of course, there's always the possibility that they're so obtuse that they didn't notice it. And let's go back to the chat. Yes. So we have this gay fellow who worked for McKinsey and looks like a weasel. And he's a gay dad. And of course, I mean, but Judge Fever is going to sweep the nation in 2024. Stuff out of EMJ's nightmares, says No Sleep. Oscar Toe says Pete Buttigieg is the pride of the white man. Professor Pohl says, tomorrow I get to spend Thanksgiving alone. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Stanley Johnson, Ashimane Bravo says, Stanley Johnson, father of Boris, says on TV that it would be good to wipe out most of humanity. Yeah, the deep greens are really, they're not bothering to hide their beliefs. They dream of genocide. Gamion says, I don't love Pete Buttigieg. Well, according to the media, you are in the distinct minority. It's also a class war between middle-class whites and the middle-upper-class white-collar whites, says Ashimane Bravo. Is Luke Ford catching up to KMG? As Bob Paxson asks this. I haven't looked at Luke Ford's Twitter feed for, almost 2 years. People were talking about him yesterday. So I went to his Twitter feed, and apparently he is loving it in Australia and is talking seriously about remaining there. I mean, leaving Los Angeles, leaving America behind, and moving to Australia. And he is not bothered by the dictatorial lockdown. He likes it just fine. Ashimane Bravo says they are only attacking the bad whites, those that support Trump, fly American flags, support guns, rights, etc. You can become a redeemed good white if you espouse the state ideology. I don't agree with that, actually, because the latest line has been that no, your white supremacy, your white evilness cannot be ameliorated. It's like the mark of Cain. Okay, Gamians. Well, let's see. I watched Heather Heyer's mom on CNN. Wow, it was terrible, says More, please. Yeah, what a stitch up that James Field trial was. I mean, I've seen the video. You've all seen the video. So we have a man, people are bashing, leftists are screaming and bashing on his car, And it seems like he panics. He wants to get out of there because he's afraid he's going to be pulled out and beaten to death. Oh, yes. And life in prison for that. Heather Heyer, of course, was a left-wing radical paralegal. And then we find out that she had supposedly no social media footprint. I don't buy that. I think it was likely expunged quickly after it was known that she was dead. The math was, yeah, okay, Susanna, I'm not going to repeat that. 3 more white men sacrificed to the mob in the Arbory, the jogger case, says Gamian. Well, I guess he's jogging in heaven now. Dionysus says, I haven't watched TV in over 10 years. Then I moved to a place that had cable TV, and I was horrified at what I saw on MSN. Visionary Companion says, are lawyers required to pat their clients on the back? If that woman has children, how can she face them after giving that goon a back rub on camera? If the left won't disavow guys who plow through parades of kids, nor will they disavow pedophiles, I see no reason for the right to be disavowing their own anymore, says Oscar Toe. And you can't easily leave from Australia either. He's stuck there now. Jonathan Pohl says, Luke always said that if he left LA, it would be to go to Israel. He's just digging the vibe, apparently. Ashley Bravo says, according to Colin Liddell, a final revenge, Spencer vows to pay his Charlottesville damages in rusty pennies. I don't have a very high opinion of Colin Liddell, as you know. I went to his site. I don't know how I got there. And I saw his little satirical pieces about the trial. Yes. Another Colin Liddell article headline, Richard Spencer's trust fund on its way to dirtbag left after Charlottesville decision. True, Greenberg reminds us anyone who kills Cain will suffer vengeance sevenfold. Better to carry an AR than drive a Charger, says Bob Paxson. Okay, who's Colin Liddell? He is, okay. He was some figure on the alt-right. Apparently, he regards himself as the enforcer of right-wing views. What's acceptable, what is not. Okay, this was a sad story for me to read because I've had some dealings over the years with the Salvation Army, and I had admired them of a charity that actually helped people and wasn't pushing abortion and other noxious things. This is from Central Nova News. The Salvation Army wants its white donors to give it more than just money this Christmas season. Its leadership is also demanding they apologize for being racist. It's a part of a push by the Christian charitable organization to embrace the ideas of Black Lives Matter, an activist group working to, among other things, dismantle white privilege and disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure. The Salvation Army's Alexandria-based leadership has created an International Social Justice Commission, which has developed and released a resource to educate its white donors, volunteers, and employees called Let's Talk About Racism. It asserts that Christianity is institutionally racist, calling for white Christians to repent and offer a sincere apology to Blacks for being antagonistic to Black people or the culture, values, and interests of the Black community. Many have come to believe that we lived in a post-racial society, but racism is very real for our brothers and sisters who are refused jobs and housing, denied basic rights, and brutalized and oppressed simply because of the color of their skin, one lesson explains. There is an urgent need for Christians to evaluate racist attitudes and practices in light of our faith and to live faithfully in today's world. Yes, in this world, Abercrombie and Finch has to pay out an enormous sum of money because there weren't enough Black people in their catalog. How one can even sue over this is an interesting question, but they folded. And it's been an open secret for years that in any company with any money, the black employees will eventually get together and accuse that company of discrimination, a discrimination in promotion, salaries, etc. And the company will fold and pay out a huge settlement. So who's on top? In an accompanying study guide on racism, Salvation Army authors explain that all whites are racist, even if they don't realize it. The subtle nature of racism is such that people who are not consciously racist easily function with the privileges, empowerment, and benefits of the dominant ethnicity, thus unintentionally perpetuating injustice. Yes, again, I feel the need to say that America has institutional affirmative action or a quota system, such that someone who gets off the plane from Bombay has more privileges than a native-born white American. The subtle, yes, Sunday school curriculum that only uses white photography and imagery is an example given that perpetuates injustice. We must stop denying the existence of individual and systemic institutional racism. They exist and are still at work to keep white Americans in power, the lesson says. Let's Talk About Racism pushes arguments identical to those of leading critical race theory purveyors Robin DiAngelo and Henry Rogers, aka Ibram Kendi. Actually, that's Ibram X. Kendi. And the X stands for mystery, whose work is recommended by Salvation Army authors. DiAngelo and Kendi claim that any observable difference in relative behavior or accomplishment between racial groups is due to the inherent racism of whites, arguing against the traditional American concept of equal opportunity in favor of the Marxist-inspired goal of equality of outcome. Structural racism is the overarching system of racial bias across institutions and society. These systems give privileges to white people, resulting in disadvantages to blacks, reads a Salvation Army lesson. Stop trying to be colorblind. While this might sound helpful, it actually ignores the God-given differences we all possess, as well as the beautiful cultures of our black and brown brothers and sisters. Let's Talk About Racism explains. Oh, we want to talk about differences? Sure. But there's a whole bunch of differences we're not allowed to talk to. Okay. So the differences are that in every respect that we're allowed to talk about, black people are better than white people. Okay. Well, that's good to know. Instead of trying to be colorblind, try seeing the beauty in our differences. Again, some differences, and welcome them into your homes, churches, and workplaces. Being colorblind also ignores the discrimination our black and brown brothers and sisters face and does not allow us to address racism properly. Founded in 1865 in London, England, the Salvation Army is both a Protestant Christian church and an international charitable organization. Its first Red Kettle was set up in Oakland, California in 1891. National Advisory Board members include Dallas Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, Chick-fil-A Foundation President Rodney Bullard, and charter school pioneer J.C. Huizinga. And are they going to have anything to say about this relentless attack on white people by the Salvation Army? I would hazard to guess that the overwhelming majority of donations made to the Salvation Army come from white people. But that's not enough. It's never enough, of course. And let's talk about my own benighted church, the Church of Rome. This is a piece from Hannah Nightingale at the Post-Millennial. On Monday, it was revealed that the Catholic University of America has on display a painting and multiple prints depicting George Floyd as, wait for it, Jesus. The icon has no place at the Catholic University of America. It is blasphemous and offense to the Catholic faith, but it is not surprising at all that it was put there. A junior at Catholic University told the Daily Signal in an email. It is just another symptom of the liberalization and the secularization of our campus. No, this goes far beyond liberalization. The student added, there are many students, faculty, and staff who are concerned about this, but there is nothing we can do. And if we sound the alarm, we will be labeled racists. Karna Lozoya, vice president for University Communications, told the Daily Signal that artist Kelly Latimore's painting Mama depicts the Virgin Mary supporting the body of the dead Christ. You can identify Jesus by the marks in the halo, she added. Despite the university deflecting claims that the painting depicts Floyd, Lattimore has indicated that it depicts both Floyd and Jesus. Following the violent death of George Floyd on May 25, 2020, Lattimore created this icon in June of that year, says its description posted alongside the painting. The image is evocative of the Pieta, the Mother of Sorrows. The description continues, may Mary, the mirror of justice, hear the cry of all who have known the sorrow of losing a loved one to violence and injustice. Amen. In an interview with the Christian Century, Lattimore said that Mama was commissioned by my partner, Evie Schunhair, as a way to mourn George Floyd. In my first sketch, Mary was looking at the Savior, but we ended up shifting her gaze to the viewer. It was Evie's idea. That subtle shift was powerful. It wasn't focusing on the death, which was horrible, but the viewer and guiding us to communal thought and prayer and action. There were so many voices that went into that icon in the Black community. There's dialogue about whether continuously showing dead Black bodies. Again, this dreadful speech. Why not just, dead Black men or dead Black people? No, it's got to be bodies. I worried about that, but several Black friends of mine told me this was needed, God being present in the dead Black body as a way to respond so this doesn't keep happening. Lattimore told the Christian Century that he commonly gets asked, is it George Floyd or Jesus? My answer was yes. This non-answer frustrated the hell out of a lot of people. Again, it's them trying to protect God, and we can be pretty sure that when we try to protect God, we're creating an idol. He noted that he frequently gets death threats and spiritual denunciations from Eastern Orthodox individuals in Russia and Ukraine. Regarding Mama, throats will be cut because of this heresy, one said. I think it goes without saying that George Floyd didn't deserve to die, and I sincerely appreciate the efforts of millions of Catholic Americans who engaged in good faith advocacy to advance policies that will prevent the use of excessive force by law enforcement. Junior politics major and former Catholic University College Republicans President Blaine, B-L-Y-N-E, Clegg, told the Daily Signal, who noted, though, that George Floyd is not Jesus Christ. Yes. Oh, Langston Hughes has also been iconized. And who says that miracles, the age of miracles is over? Certainly not Kelly Lattimore. Certainly not at all. Hang on. Yeah, here we go. Yes, and she talks about, what is it? John Lewis, I think. Let me find this. It'll just take a second here. M-A-R-A. No, it's not in this story. I think it must be in this one. The Christian Century has a long laudatory article about Kelly Lattimore because I guess that's what Christianity has devolved to, that George Floyd is Christ-like. Let's see. They're not canonized saints, she says, of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Mahalia Jackson, Dostoevsky, and Flannery O'Connor. They're not canonized saints, which isn't a problem to me. The Catholic Church has this process for who's a saint that involves a miracle. I think it's a miracle that John Lewis crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge, got beat over the head, and kept going. Yeah, all right, if you say so. Of course, I remember that Father Jim Martin, S.J., also explicitly compared with artwork, blasphemous artwork, George Floyd to Jesus Christ. This is a story from the Baltimore Brew. And I talk about it because it indicates that the Catholic education system is not fit for purpose, that it has failed generations of Catholic school children, that it seems to be determined to turn out adults who simply don't believe in any of the tenets of Catholicism. This is from the Baltimore Brew by Fern Shen. For the 12-year-old student at St. Francis of Assisi School, Wearing a favorite old t-shirt with a gay pride message on dress down day was nothing new. She had worn it before on relaxed dress code days with no problem. But this past Friday, at the end of the Mass that she and her classmates attended next door at St. Francis of Assisi Church in Northeast Baltimore, the shirt caused a stir. As Father John J. Jack Lombardi's direction, witnesses told the Brew the school principal directed the homeroom teacher to tell the girl her shirt would have to come off. The teacher made her remove it in front of the other students as they stood at the back of the church. For the rest of the day, everyone was very angry about it, said her seventh grade classmate, Dylan Hoffman, speaking at this morning's Mass. He and dozens of other students, as well as parents and other adults, showed up at the church wearing rainbow-striped gay pride COVID masks. How perfect. Chef's kiss. Many also wore white t-shirts with the rainbow-hued message, "I am a child of God." Hoffman said the students organized this show of support as a way to stand with their classmate whose mother is gay. Well, good for her. I think that it was really awful what happened. The way they asked her to take it off was really embarrassing, said Liam Hines, another seventh grader. So here we have a bunch of 13-year-olds instructing the adults in the room about what Catholicism is and what it isn't. And a lot of these adults are so empty-headed or cowardly that they're on board with this. It was like asking her to take off a piece of her family, said Hines of Lauraville. We can't let this slide. It was really cruel. I'm very proud of these kids, said his father, Sean Hines, who stood with his arm around his son and also wore a pride mask to the church service. The student who was made to remove the shirt, whose mother asked that her name not be used, said that when she was instructed to do so, she was left confused. The message on her rainbow-striped jersey, Proud 365, is meant to show commitment to dignity and respect for alphabet people every day of the year, not just during Pride season. It's 3 months in Canada now. Did you know that? It's true. After being told to take off the shirt, the student was summoned to the office by Principal Carmen Collins, who told her she had violated the school's dress code. Did Collins explain further? She said it was because it was a Catholic school, the student said. I thought it was a poor excuse. If Lombardi noticed the plethora of gay pride masks dotting the congregation in the pews today, he showed no sign of it. The tagline of his sermon was Christ's kingdom twists human fiefdoms. But subtle acknowledgement up front came from two officiants, both of whom wore pride masks. Introducing the congregation's confirmation class, Lauren Voos noted that all are welcome, and my heart is full of pride. Going off script, Lector Beatrice Messaris managed to slip a blunt message about the incident in at the end of the intercessions, the call and response portion of the service for marginalized orientations and gender identities. Marginalized orientations. Maybe MAPS? Does that include MAPS? Does it include incest? Does it include bestiality? She said, and the congregation answered with some extra volume, Lord, hear our prayer. And of course, St. Paul decreed that women are not allowed to speak in church, but who cares about St. Paul? As the priest and congregants filed out of the church Lombardi refused to discuss the incident. I'm going to remain peaceful today, he said, referring the brew to the Archdiocese of Baltimore. In a statement emailed this afternoon, Christian Kenzierski, Executive Director of Communications for the Archdiocese, defended Lombardi's actions, offering this explanation for why the student was asked to change their attire before returning to the classroom. The attire contained imagery and language with a message that could be determined to oppose teachings of the Catholic Church. St. Francis of Assisi is a Catholic parish and school that upholds the tenets and teachings of the Catholic faith. Kenzierski disputed the eyewitnesses who said Lombardi directed the principal to have the student remove her pride shirt. It was the school administration that initiated the request, he said. Noting that the church teaches that every person be treated with respect, compassion, and sensitivity, he said that the Archdiocese understands the concerns about what happened and is working on plans to bring together the community to discuss this in an open, honest, and listening way. Yes, people actually talk like that. Many of the adults participating in the protest said the harsh treatment of the student does not reflect their experience of the church prior to July, when Lombardi took over as pastor. My family is 3 generations at this church, said protest supporter Megan Murphy, who wore a shirt that said, "Be you." Yes, well, Catholicism doesn't teach be you. It teaches be Christ-like. It's always been blended and diverse here, Murphy said. According to its website, the church dates back to 1927 and the school to 1957. Our parish's dedication to Catholic social teachings and social justice helps us to engage with our larger communities. The church's website says, all are welcome here, and that's a mantra we live by. This is a home. There's a home for everyone here at SFA. Amelia Voos said the atmosphere at the church since Lombardi stepped in has turned hostile. As a queer woman, I never felt endangered before here, but I felt in danger recently, said Voos, a youth coordinator for the church for more than 3 years. She said that she and her mother, Lauren Voos, the church's longtime religious education coordinator, have a long family association with St. Francis of Assisi. I grew up in this parish. To think that this is happening here is painful. Amelia Voos said she and her mother resigned from their positions at the church last week. So there is some good news here, but that she was not able to discuss the specific incidents that motivated them to do so. Speaking for the church, Ken Zierski said he had no information on the matter as a personnel issue. The former employee would have, I hope, followed channels to report, and therefore an investigation or query would have started, he said. Others who participated in today's protest show that they still have positive feelings about the institution. A boy who wore a pride mask carried the communion host up to the front of the church. Some of the others in the church wearing pride masks could be seen dropping money in the collection basket. As for the mother of the student at the center of the controversy, she said she is waiting for a response to her complaint to the Archdiocese Superintendent of Catholic Schools. I hope it results in diversity and inclusion training for the staff and the church, she said. And an apology would be nice. Yeah. The reason these children act this way is because they have not received a proper Catholic education. And few Catholic children in North America receive a proper Catholic education. But a large part of the blame goes to the Vatican itself, because it now treats homosexuality as a psychological issue rather than a moral issue. It talks about disorientation and the like, or disorder, this or that, instead of calling it a sin. In the Penny Catechism, which people in the Anglosphere know, and of course the Baltimore Catechism, which Americans used to know well, the sin of sodomy is described as one of the 4 sins crying to heaven for vengeance, along with willful murder, oppression of the poor, and cheating workers of their wages. And okay, let's go to the chat here. You know, this sort of thing has come up many times in the United States. And typically what happens is that the priest who upholds Catholic teaching is forced out. Hello to 1467 Masterson Wilson. Yo Mama says excommunicate. 1467 says past time for talk. Why are these people sending their children to parochial school? It's right there in the name, says Chogokin 666. 1467 likes Colin Liddell. As I mentioned before, Luke Ford used to have him on his show all the time. He putatively lives in Japan. And Luke would always ask, so what's happening in Japan? You know, tell us something. Well, it's, pretty much the same. Really? Do you even live in Japan? I have my suspicions, I must say. Professor Pohl says the alt-right website had only 3 guys. They were Spencer, Liddell, and Nowicki. Today, only Nowicki calls himself alt-right. Yo Mama says, I've been saying for years, this is all leading to the normalizing of pedophilia. Ashuman Bravo says Biden releases 50 million barrels from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in an attempt to ease gasoline prices. The bratty tween impression, says Dr. Dead Name. Why are you listening to a bunch of 13-year-olds? Honestly. Drew Greenberg says control and alter both keys on a computer machine because it's an online phenomenon, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there is a button. There's a button on my keyboard here. It's a Logitech keyboard, and it's an orange. It's black print on orange, and it says FN or something like that. I don't know what it is. I'm afraid to touch it. Of course, I had this experience where I'm not a very good typist, and I type, and then suddenly my computer isn't working anymore. The sound is gone, whatever. And it's like, what did I do? What could I possibly have done here? And there is a sound off button at the top right of this keyboard. But there's other ways of the F12, which I use daily to save the template for the stories I'm going to be talking about. This also can be used to fast forward. To fast forward what? No, it's too much. And who else do we have? Is that Andy Nowicki? My trail of disgrace says diversity and inclusion training, shudder. Indeed. So let's talk about Thanksgiving, and let's talk about CBS has some ideas. CBS Mornings has some ideas. CBS segment on Thanksgiving suggests families have drinks and hors d'oeuvres in the garage while everyone takes a COVID rapid test and waits for the results before going inside. You can make it playful, make it fun, and then be able to enjoy the holiday. Yeah, like nothing like, hanging out in a garage at the end of November. Sounds really cozy, doesn't it? You see, here's the hidden message here. See, you're not, it's Thanksgiving, but you're not supposed to give thanks for all the traditional things. You're supposed to give thanks for the COVID-19 regime. Yeah, that's what you give thanks for. COVID-19 has become a religion. Oh, and of course, I don't know whether he is the Jesus or merely the John the Baptist of this new religion. Of course, I'm talking about Dr. Anthony Fauci. This is from magspunch.com. During his Fox News show, Tucker Carlson says Fauci decided to unilaterally end Christmas. During an OAN interview, former Trump administration advisor Peter Navarro said, yeah, I don't want to repeat that. Responding to the criticism, Fauci said, quote, I'm not in it for a popularity contest. I've devoted my entire professional career of 50 years to trying to safeguard and preserve the health and lives of the American people. As an infectious disease doctor who deals with outbreaks, that gets extended to the rest of the world. That's what I do. The praise or the arrows and slings are really irrelevant. I do what science drives you to do, and that's what I do. I'm not in it for a popularity contest. I'm trying to save lives. The people who weaponize lies are killing people. So the question I have is that when you show Tucker Carlson and Peter Navarro criticizing me, I consider that a badge of honor. I just wanted to make that statement. People throw up those people that make ridiculous statements. They're telling people to do things that they're going to die from and telling me I should go to jail. As they say in my old neighborhood in Brooklyn, give me a break. Yes, he is spotless, Dr. Fauci, just like Jesus Christ, apparently. No stain of sin on Dr. Fauci, and anyone who suggests otherwise, killing people. And this is from the Wall Street Journal. Robbie Whalen and Brianna Abbott. And here we go. That's not it. Yes, this is about antibodies. COVID-19 antibody tests in demand as people worry about immunity. Doctors say what constitutes a sufficient level of protection against the virus isn't known. Some people are taking COVID-19 antibody tests to determine whether they might be protected against the virus. Many health officials and doctors wish they wouldn't. How dare you? You have no right to know this. It's not helpful, people. Antibody tests are one tool some people are deploying to help them decide which precautions to take to protect themselves and curb the spread of COVID 19. Some vaccinated people say they want to know whether their protection has weakened to the point that they should get a booster. Well, some previously infected people say they want to measure the strength of the response the virus generated in their immune systems. Katie Savage, 41, doesn't want to get a COVID-19 vaccine because she worries about side effects for her unborn child. She survived an August bout with the disease that put her on a ventilator for 9 days and thinks immunity from that infection is enough to protect her. The Centers for Disease Control has recommended since August that expecting mothers of women who plan to get pregnant take the vaccine, citing research showing the shots are safe and effective during pregnancy. She plans to get a test later this month to see if she still has antibodies circulating in her blood. To me, that would be okay, cool, I'm still good, I'm still safe, she said. But it isn't known what level of antibodies effectively prevents infection or a severe case of COVID-19, said Emily Volk, president of the College of American Pathologists. She said getting a positive antibody test isn't a substitute for getting vaccinated. Substitute for vaccination. To be, I think we can say at this point, to be unvaccinated is to be not truly alive or perhaps not even human, So apparently they don't know, how much antibody protection one needs. Perhaps they could do some research about that. Not out of the question, is it? I mean, it would be a useful thing to know. But now we are at the stage where unvaccinated people are being urged to get vaccinated in order to protect the vaccinated. Yes. This is from Robert Towie at CNBC. The WHO says fully vaccinated should wear masks and physically distance as COVID infections surge. Even if you're vaccinated, continue to take precautions to prevent becoming infected yourself and to infecting someone else who could die. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said. That means wearing a mask, maintaining distance, avoiding crowds, and meeting others outside if you can, or in a well-ventilated space inside. Oh, do you remember when we were promised that when the vaccines would come out, the vaccines would not only protect us, that was it. That was like final protection from being infected. And how did that work out? We were also told that people who got vaccinated could go back to, the good old days when people didn't have to wear a mask, didn't have to socially distance, weren't terrified about being close to another human being indoors or maybe even outdoors. How did that turn out? But as always, I remind you, trust the science, because the science is always right. The experts are always right. And some people will say, yes, but the experts seem conflicted. There are people, some experts who disagree. They're wrong. Okay. We know who are the real experts, the ones who are approved by Rachel Walensky and Dr. Fauci and Dr. Ghebreyesus et al. They are the real experts. And if their advice tends to shift, well, it's like science. Science is constantly moving, constantly shifting. It's a riot of movement, science. So don't let yourself be confused by conspiracy theorists. Australia. Apparently Luke Ford is happy with the dictatorship. But according to Kylie Stevens and Sam McPhee at the Daily Mail Australia, fury as controlling bureaucrats demand millions of Australians wear masks through the Christmas season, even though 95% will be fully vaxxed. Masks could remain mandatory in New South Wales in indoor settings for even longer. State is set to hit 95% vaccination rates and has low daily case numbers. Government looking to keep masks in retail as Christmas shopping rush begins. 2GB's Ben Fordham led chorus of furious backlash over bureaucrats' proposal. Health Minister Brad Hazard. Okay, that was the ranting. I believe that was the ranting lunatic that was going viral yesterday. Has pledged his support for the mask rule extension, with the government tipped to make an announcement within days. And it's becoming exhausting, I've got to say. Radio host Ben Fordham said, or breakfast host, it was supposed to end mid-December. So what's changed? We stopped worrying about case numbers a while ago, remember? That's why we got vaccinated. How long is this going to go on? If we're worried about Christmas shopping, then presumably we're worried about Boxing Day and New Year's sales, and on it goes. Masks are also compulsory on public transport, in rideshare vehicles, and in common areas of apartment buildings. Yeah, masks forever. You can't be too careful. Meanwhile, New Zealand, which is pursuing a zero COVID strategy. And here is someone speaking at a lectern with a very large man signing next to him. It's ridiculous, because it's drawing attention from the person who's speaking. New Zealand's borders will remain closed over the next 5 months as the country takes precautions to fight the coronavirus, with officials planning to allow some international travelers to enter the nation in April. This is from Cameron Jenkins at The Hill. A phased approach to reconnecting with the world is the safest approach to ensure risk is carefully managed, New Zealand's COVID-19 response minister, Chris Hipkins, said, according to Reuters. This reduces any potential impacts on vulnerable communities and the New Zealand health system. Yes, apparently New Zealand has been absolutely crippled by COVID-19. How crippled? 10,000 cases and 40 deaths. That's in almost 2 years. Yeah, 40 deaths. What has happened to those people in Australasia? And some disturbing news. This is from Paul Joseph Watson at Summit News. A former professional Premier League footballer has called for an investigation after yet another player suddenly collapsed in the middle of a match last night. Sheffield United midfielder John Fleck fell to the ground during his team's game at Reading and had to be taken off on a stretcher after receiving lengthy treatment and being given an oxygen mask. The 30-year-old Scottish international went down unchallenged before teammates quickly waved medics on, BBC reports. Fleck was taken to hospital, where he is said to be in good condition. The player becomes yet another unfortunate addition to a lengthy list of footballers and other athletes who have suddenly collapsed on the field of play in recent months. As we previously highlighted, major German newspaper Berliner Zeitung recently published a report seeking to answer why an unusually large number of professional and amateur soccer players have collapsed recently. I'm saying it's a miasma. Yeah, it's got to be a miasma, because there could be no other possible explanation. And let's look at the latest numbers from the province of Ontario, population of 14.8 million. Nearly 600 new COVID-19 cases, 7 deaths Wednesday. Let's see, 591, the actual number of cases. 293 of them are unvaccinated, 14 partially vaccinated, 237 are fully vaccinated, and 47 have an unknown vaccination status. To date, 89% of Ontarians 12 years and older have received 1 dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, and 86% have received 2 doses and are considered fully vaccinated. Well, for now, at any rate. That could change because, science. And we've had so many of these silly stories about COVID-19. And here's another one. Aaron Rodgers, who apparently is America's wickedest man. This is from Alan Raskin at the Daily Mail. Aaron Rodgers appears once again to have misled the public about a COVID-related health issue. Yeah, wait for it. That bad man misleading the public yet again. This time, the Green Bay Packers quarterback claims he wasn't being serious during Tuesday's interview with SiriusXM's Pat McAfee when he said he was suffering from COVID toe, which is something that has actually plagued people who have contracted the virus, such as Rogers. Really now? Really? No lingering effects other than the COVID toe, Rogers told McAfee Tuesday when asked about his recent bout with COVID-19. Although he did chuckle, Rogers did not explain that he was joking at the time. During a video press conference with reporters Wednesday, however, the embattled NFL MVP explained that he actually has a fractured toe and not any lesions that are associated with COVID toe or pernio, as it is also known. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. We've all been talking about this pernio for what, 18, 20 months now. COVID toe indeed. I mentioned yesterday that it's worse than turf toe and it must be a bone issue, Rogers said. I can't believe I have to come on here and talk about my medical information, but yeah, I have a fractured toe. I've never heard of COVID toe before, Rogers continued, like 99.99% of the world. I have no lesions on my feet. It's just a classic case of disinformation. It's surprising coming from what used to be a reputable journalistic institution, but that's the world we live in these days. Oh, I see that Emily Ratajkowski is in the news again. She wrote a book called My Body, lamenting about the fact that people seem only interested in her because of her body. That might have something to do with her getting her kit off at every conceivable opportunity for the cameras. It's my damn body, new mother Emily Ratajkowski decides to proudly share pictures that show her flaunting abs, despite her concerns snaps would stir up controversy. Oh, and in other entertainment news, this is getting embarrassing now. Madonna's fans cringe as singer 63 frees the nipple and spreads her legs in explicit new bedroom shoot for Instagram. Nice to know that Madge is keeping relevant. And in New York City, this is from Steve Watson at Summit News. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio appears to have called for a vaccine mandate on the subway, meaning that anyone who hasn't taken the COVID vaccine would be banned from traveling throughout the city. He made the call on Twitter, writing, "We know vaccine mandates work." Oh, do we now? How do we know? New York City is proof of that. Now let's go even further. I'm urging Governor Kathy Hochul to institute an MTA vaccine mandate. Let's do what we can to keep our city, our residents, and our workforce safe. It would mean that not only would a vaccine mandate be in place to visit gyms, restaurants, cinemas, and the like, but also that anyone wanting to go anywhere, including traveling to work, would have to show proof of vaccinations. Some suggested that de Blasio meant a mandate for MTA workers. However, the tweet clearly does not single out workers. Oh, and speaking of New York State, tough guy. There's a tough guy politician there, and his name is Pat Burke. And he's laying down the law on vaccines. Democratic New York State legislator, Secretary of Majority Conference, author of Pence Bill, Microbead Ban, Go Bills. Yes, of course. He's a populist. He's just a regular guy. So he has put forward a bill. He tweets yesterday, "I'm introducing a bill that allows insurance providers to deny coverage for COVID-related treatment to those who refuse to be vaccinated. Do your part or pay your own way. Freedom isn't free." Okay, Pat, now do AIDS. Now do AIDS. And he was ratioed very, very hard. He responded, "Let me know when smoking and obesity become highly contagious diseases that disrupt every facet of life, overwhelm hospitals, and cost the government trillions of dollars." Actually, well, wait a minute. See, we've been told for decades now that smoking is evil, because it costs governments money. Actually, smokers save governments money because they die. They tend to die 5 years earlier than non-smokers, according to the esteemed late Dr. Richard Dahl, which means that they save governments billions and billions and billions of dollars in pension costs and healthcare costs. But obesity, yes, it does cost the government trillions of dollars. Socialized medicine exists to a certain extent in the United States with Medicare and Medicaid. It's not as complete as it is in Canada, but one of the great problems with socialized medicine is that it leads to the belief that the government owns your body, just as organized mandatory schooling leads to the belief that teachers or educators, as we are supposed to call them now, own your children. And let's hear a cri de coeur from Alex Berenson at his Substack. Funny story, a month ago, The New Yorker wrote a long piece on Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, who owns the Los Angeles Times and is the richest man in Los Angeles. Dr. Soon-Shiong made his billions thanks to a chemotherapy drug called Abraxane, which is a repatented and dressed-up version of a nasty and somewhat effective drug called Paxlovid. Abraxane came out in 2005 and was among the first cancer drugs to cost a few $1,000s a month, a price that seems almost quaint now when some cost 10 times that much, because pharmaceutical companies are all about helping patients. Overall, the article wasn't quite a hit piece, but it wasn't favorable to Dr. Soon-Shiong, who, by the way, is an extremely serious COVID-phobe, a fact that doesn't say much about his command of science. The writer, Stephen Witt, went into great and accurate detail about the history of Abraxane and Dr. Soon-Shiong's many corporate machinations. Witt even mentioned how a comprehensive independent review published in Annals of Oncology in 2006 concluded that Abraxane and similar drugs did not really offer a significant therapeutic benefit over established medicines and turned them old wine in a new bottle. I should just mention that on the book club on Friday, I'm going to be discussing a book called Empire of Pain, which is about the Sackler family. Berenson continues, the article was deeply reported, nicely written too, no surprise given where it ran. You may have heard of the New Yorker. For generations, it has been the most respected outlet in journalism, the place practically every serious reporter who can write a lick wants to end up. Along the way, Witt included this line, quote, a 2006 article in the New York Times reported that Abraxane was selling for $4,200 per dose. Generic Paxlovid cost 1/25th as much, unquote. I remembered that article, Berenson points out, because I wrote it. Gee, I wonder where Witt found out that about that Annals of Oncology article. The point here isn't that Witt plagiarized a bit of my piece, though he kind of did. That's what magazine writers do. The point here is that I could write a piece 15 years ago about medicine and the games pharmaceutical companies play that holds up well enough today for the New Yorker to steal from. I am the same reporter now I was then. Check that. I'm better now. I understand the games and their stakes better now than I ever have. And I know that you are all depending on me in a way you shouldn't have to, because coverage of COVID and the vaccines has been sucked into a political black hole that has made asking even the most basic questions next to impossible. Thus, I have the field of serious investigative journalism about the COVID vaccines, probably the most important medical story of our lives, more or less to myself. Believe it or not, I'd rather have much more competition. I take this responsibility seriously. I am not hawking natural cures. I am not pretending that ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine is some cheap or easy solution, or that the vaccines are some plot to kill 90% of the population. And probably 98% of the stories on this Substack are available to everyone for free, which is a weird way to run a grift. So Berenson concludes, so yeah, I'm doing my best, which isn't to say I don't make mistakes, but those of you who have been reading me on Twitter and now here for the last 20 months, and that's a lot of folks by now, know my record. Really, this little exercise in chest thumping isn't for you. It's for your friends and relatives and everyone you're trying to convince. And Alex Berenson's book called Pandemia is coming out very, very soon. Let's go to lockdown skeptics. Just check to see whether Boris has flip-flopped yet again. I'm pretty sure that is about to happen. Vaccines were never a route to eliminating COVID entirely. Jabs are vital in reducing serious illness and death, but repeated infection is the only route to herd immunity, argues Sunitra Gupta in The Telegraph. The bottomless catalog of damage done, locking down students, banning students from attending schools, is nothing short of horrendous, the effects of which will stretch far out into the future of the lives of these people, writes Jamie Walden in Bournebrook magazine. The merchants of moral panic, the main driver of their actions is always the spirit of defeat, that is the consciousness of having lost the level of social control that they thought was their perpetual inheritance, writes Thomas Harrington for the Brownstone Institute. Nicola Sturgeon, who is the First Minister of Scotland, defies Debbie Sridhar on COVID vaccine passports. Sturgeon has defied her most prominent COVID advisor by refusing to extend vaccine passports to bars and restaurants. So that means that British Columbia, my province, has a stricter COVID lockdown than Scotland, which frankly surprises me. And vaccinated no less infectious than unvaccinated, CDC study finds. A preprint study out this week from the U.S. government's COVID response team at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has found vaccinated people to be no less infectious than unvaccinated people. The study tested inmates in a federal prison with high vaccination rates daily during a SARS-CoV-2 Delta variant outbreak. The study was very thorough. Inmates who tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 were, where willing, PCR tested for 10 consecutive days and reported symptoms via a questionnaire. The researchers performed whole genome sequencing and viral culture analysis on a high proportion of the 978 specimens collected, allowing them to assess the duration of PCR positivity and viral culture positivity. There were 95 participants in total, of whom 78 were double vaccinated and 17 were not double vaccinated, 2 having received 1 dose and 15 having received none. No significant differences were found between double vaccinated and not double vaccinated in either the duration of PCR positivity, 13 days each, or in the duration of culture positivity, 5 days each. The authors conclude, quote, clinicians and public health practitioners should consider vaccinated persons who become infected with SARS-CoV-2 to be no less infectious than unvaccinated persons. Again, this is from the CDC. This is in line with the findings of Public Health England and others. While this sounds like more good news for countering vaccine passports, vaccine mandates, and all of the vaccine-based coercion and discrimination, it may be less good news for ending general restrictions and interventions. The authors state these findings are critically important, especially in congregate settings where viral transmission can lead to large outbreaks, which suggests they think the lack of efficacy against transmission is a reason to intervene more generally to prevent large outbreaks in congregate settings. It could be a long winter. Italy to place further restrictions on the unvaccinated with super green pass. English schools stop in-person teaching after imposing their own circuit breaker lockdown. 600 Google employees signed manifesto to overturn the company's vaccine mandate. Boarding school criticized for forcing mask-exempt children to wear yellow badges. Yes, that is an act that actually happened. The Telegraph has more. Farrington School in Kent, which charges £34,000 per year for boarders, has made it compulsory for children to wear face masks in classrooms and corridors following a rise in cases of COVID-19. In a letter to parents, David Jackson, the school's headmaster, said that pupils who are exempt from wearing masks should wear a yellow badge to indicate this. The move has been criticized by family groups who say that it is deeply inappropriate given the historic connotations with yellow badges. The Jews in Nazi-occupied Europe were forced to wear a yellow star so they could be easily marked out for segregation and discrimination. Molly Kingsley, co-founder of parent campaign group Us for Them, said asking children to wear some form of exemption marker has been quite common in schools, and unbelievably, the specific example of asking them to wear a yellow badge is not in isolation. Why are Sweden and India not seeing a COVID surge? I don't know. Lack of miasma, perhaps? That could be the only reason. How about we compare Florida to California? Nah, we don't want to do that. It might be unpleasant reading. So I have not seen the new James Bond film, No Time to Die. Should I give a spoiler alert about what happens? Ryan George has a great moment on his pitch meeting when the producer's face just falls in real time to a look of consternation and disbelief, because that's what they decided to do. Rebecca Rubin and Brent Lang write, COVID-era conundrum, No Time to Die may be the year's highest grossing Hollywood movie, but it could still lose millions. It's eclipsed 730 million in global ticket sales, according to Variety, making the James Bond sequel both the year's highest grossing Hollywood film and top performing film at the box office since COVID-19 appeared on the scene and nearly shut down the movie business. The action-packed spy spectacle, which endured several coronavirus-related delays, has become the rare pandemic-era box office hit, which is even more impressive considering adult audiences, the core demographic for No Time to Die, have been reluctant to return to theaters. However, the movie cost more than $250 million to produce, at least $100 million to promote, and tens of millions more to postpone over 16 months. Insiders say No Time to Die needs to make closer to $900 million to break even, a feat that would have been realistic had a global health crisis not entirely upended the theater industry. As a result, the film now stands to lose $100 million in its theatrical run, according to sources close to production. I don't know, maybe it hasn't done all that well comparatively because it's crummy. That's always a possibility, isn't it? The potential losses illuminate the harsh reality currently facing big budget films. Becoming profitable, at least in the theatrical run, is uncommon in the best of times and basically unfeasible during a pandemic. No Time to Die is far from the only tentpole to lose money while the movie industry struggles to recover. Marvel's superhero epics Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings and Eternals, as well as the Suicide Squad and Christopher Nolan's Mindbender Tenet, all stand to finish in the red with losses in the tens of millions. Could it be that people have become tired of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? One can only hope. And finally, I want to talk about an essay on the site im1776.com by John Smoke called The Charity Industrial Complex. Let's be uncharitable, how charity foundations damage Western societies. Imagine a billionaire. He's an apolitical man. The driving purpose of his life has been to create goods and services for consumers and to provide shareholder value. He's 70 years old, and suddenly realizing he won't be around forever, starts thinking about his legacy. He consults his younger wife. She is also apolitical. After a few days or so of consulting each other, they decide to find a way to donate $800 million to charity. They set to go and speak to their wealth advisors to consult on where to go from here. The wealth advisors create a charitable foundation, the Bill Foundation. The Bill Foundation isn't a charity itself, the couple's advisors explain to them, but a grant-making organization. That way, it can parcel out money to charities, $500K here, $100K there, as it sees fit, with a diverse portfolio of charitable giving. Most of the $800 million will be invested in a mixture of bonds and equities before being charitably dispersed. This means that the $800 million over time is set to grow. That way, it can keep giving out grants for a century or more with no real end in sight. Mr. Billionaire and his wife help to chair the foundation. They round out this organization with a few well-paid, gray-haired industry specialists. These specialists, if you asked one at a dinner party, would probably tell you that they are moderate left liberals. They believe in the power of markets and the proceeds of those markets in helping people. The first grants of our imaginary foundation go out. 500K to help fight global poverty. Soon after that, 300K go to shelter to aid the homeless. Then 200K to the Malala Fund to help bolster girls' secondary education around the world. All handshake-worthy causes which Mr. Billionaire has no issues with, even if he is, by his own smiling admission, hardly a lefty liberal himself. And so our imaginary billionaire is happy, insured of his legacy. A couple of years later, he dies surrounded by his loving family, an apparently fulfilling life well lived. The now widow of Mr. Billionaire, once her grief subsides, resolves to get further involved in the Bill Foundation. It's her late husband's legacy, after all. She thus becomes head of the foundation and immediately sets about making some new hires. One of these hires is a lady called Ms. Weiss. Ms. Weiss was a socialist activist in her youth, but quickly settled into a string of government units dedicated to tackling child poverty. With a contralto voice, she projects gravitas. She is liked by the rest of the foundation's board. The donations to Oxfam Shelter and the Malala Fund continue. Meanwhile, the $800 million endowment has been well invested by its fund managers. Under a fiscally conservative government, the stock market is up 25%. There is capital for even more donations. So Ms. Weiss lays out a plan for a new set of funding targets. 400K goes to a group called Open Democracy, a news site making waves in uncovering global corruption. Open Democracy also receives money from George Soros's Open Society Foundation and Pierre Omidyar's Illuminate, two highly respected charitable institutions. The 200K is earmarked to help fund Open Democracy's investigations into dark money in politics. 300K then goes to the Center for Countering Digital Hate. This money is to help bolster its latest campaign against online anonymity. While the foundation was initially skeptical about the group, it operates an opaque structure with no clear evidence of who funds it. The CCDH's management did more than enough to provide assurances. Lastly, 200K are donated to the Algorithmic Justice League. The latter group seeks to raise awareness about the impacts of AI, warning how AI systems can amplify racism, sexism, ableism, and other forms of discrimination. This played well to the board, touching on relevant themes of dark data and discrimination. And so another successful year at our hypothetical Bill Foundation goes by. And yet something is still missing. Mr. Billionaire's widow has seen the news reports about police brutality. She's seen the studies on racial prejudice. She knows her friends and associates are talking about this. So she raises this with Ms. Weiss, who wholeheartedly concurs and proposes a new hire. A week later, Ms. Gibbs joins the team. Ms. Gibbs is a 40-year-old Black woman, well-polished, presentable, and well-spoken. She seems like a perfect fit. She is committed to combating inequalities wherever one can find them, and she can talk the talk on intersectionality in a way that no other foundation employee can. Ms. Gibbs sets out implementing a new social justice policy at the foundation with gusto. And so a week later, 500K go to the Racial Justice Network. This one claims to bring together over 30 organizations and individuals to proactively promote racial justice. The group holds a series of events at universities focusing on the decolonization of education and activism. They provide written evidence to the government on the threat to racial equality from stop and search practices. Then 300K to bail for immigration detainees, which provides free legal advice and representation to illegal migrants detained in removal centers and whose annual reports boast of improving the success rate of detainees being allowed to remain in the country. They, too, create research reports and liaise with local government officials. The last donation of the year, however, proves to be more difficult, as Ms. Gibbs wants to sign off a 100K tranche to the Harambee Organization of Black Unity. She defends the decision by pointing to how the group was founded by Kehinde Andrews, an academic at Birmingham City University. But some board members are skeptical. The group's website looks odd. There is an appeal for the funding of a nursery focused on bring Black education to the youngest of children, which one board member points out is a breach of the 2010 Equality Act. Harambee seems to have a lot of guest speakers at its events who have made some rather distasteful claims about Jewish people. This makes Ms. Weiss rather uncomfortable, so she and the board hold a Zoom meeting to discuss the proposed donation. It seems a bit full on, says one foundation stalwart. However, eventually the board unanimously concludes that the chances of a journalistic expose are slim. The donation gets green lighted. While the hypothetical put together here above is, of course, fictional, the charities featured, and most importantly, the structures and dynamics illustrated, are real. Charitable foundations and the specific charities they fund are the single most important force in modern Western societies. They complete a triumvirate of the journalism plus academia shorthand of the cathedral, as Curtis Yarvin sees it. The amount of money sloshing around these organizations is simply mind-boggling. The latter is hard to reliably quantify, but in the UK, the charity industry apparently registered £45 billion in revenues in 2021 alone. Compare this to the £40.5 billion total income in the UK higher education sector a couple of years ago, and you get the idea. Of course, some charities are innocuous, like saving red squirrels, just as some academic expenditure goes towards useful things. However, pound for pound, charities are more insidious and evil than universities, at least in the UK. This might be different in the US, although America also has gigantic influential entities like the Ford Foundation, which funds the most insane far-left disinformation. These charities rear their heads everywhere. Every piece of legislation passed has the hands of a charity, sometimes multiple charities on them. Legislators are fed bogus research by them, all of which coincidentally conclude that differences in outcomes between individuals and between groups, which must be down to some kind of socioeconomic structural inequality, demand more money for more government programs. Charities are the main intermediary unit between academia and journalism. They can imbibe whatever is coming out of universities, turn the issues in question into campaigns, and then use those campaigns to secure coverage in media outlets. This all serves to exert pressure on liberal democratic legislatures, getting them to copy-paste the charity's findings into legislation, which lawmakers can rubber stamp. Foundations are the main way charities get their money. Their main characteristic is that they are money unmoored from capitalist accumulation. This is not oligarchs trying to cynically buy privileges off the state. Of course, that also happens, but that is entirely different, nor the subject at hand. Philanthropist Sigrid Rousing, for example, is the 13th richest person in Britain. She's worth roughly £9.5 billion. Coming from the Swedish family that invented Tetra Pak packaging, Rousing runs a very influential foundation in her name, which bankrolls everything from Hope Not Hate in the UK, £915,000 to date, to an Alphabet People rights organization in Kyrgyzstan, £247,500 and counting. Now, Rousing doesn't need to buy off politicians for her personal gain. What more can someone like her hope to materialistically achieve? I doubt she cares. Rousing funds what she does because she thinks it's the right thing to do. And not only that, but also what she thinks doesn't matter too much in the long run. It will just get taken over by professional charity managers anyway. This is why any attempt to integrate the activities of these foundations into some overarching theory of neoliberal hegemonic capitalism is doomed to fail. None of this stuff really serves capitalism as a system or is in any way connected to making its founders richer. All of these foundations have a particular ideological bent. They are all left-wing in some shape or form. Some are more extreme, some are less. But they all bend in that direction insofar as there is any explicit conscious neoliberal agenda. It is utterly dwarfed by the far left charitable swamp. Unless we collectively do something to stop them, these charitable foundations are set to go on indefinitely, too. Assuming their investments are managed prudently, most hire professional investment managers, there is no reason for them not to continue splurging billions for years to come. The Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust was founded in 1904 by a Quaker pacifist. By the 1970s, it was funding communists in Mozambique. It is now one of the biggest charitable foundations in the UK, funding racial demagogues and Cybertron armies alike. Same goes for the Ford Foundation, set up, of course, by Henry Ford, who, at least judging by the international grants it made in 2021, $656 million worth, has also gone communist. When George Soros dies, do people really expect his influence to suddenly stop? It won't. It will be continued by the same machine that is currently in place and probably going even crazier and more unhinged once the old man kicks it. While personalizing attacks on oligarchs such as Soros can be useful, what we are dealing with here is a structural problem. While large foundations are the biggest funders of left wing charities, it's important to remember the state also has a direct role in doling out taxpayer money to completely opaque but ostensibly non party political third sector bodies. Kensington and Chelsea Borough Council, for instance, are very wealthy parts of London. The local government there has been conservative run since its inception. But that's not what one would think by taking a look at what the council funds. Here are just some of the names: the Muslim Cultural Heritage Center, Hodan Somali Community, Persian Care Center, Migrants Organize. In the last year, the council has spent over £120,000 on these and similar projects. A lot of these advice centers offer advice on how various ethnic communities can claim welfare benefits, which are themselves funded by the local taxpayer. All of this is clearly insane. But what is happening in Kensington and Chelsea, a staunch Conservative council, is basically being repeated everywhere across the UK and no doubt in other countries too. Some of the loopiest stuff can be found out in the Celtic fringes. This is likely because these are places isolated and parochial, making them a breeding ground for liberal yokels with a chip on their shoulder who think they're not cosmopolitan enough. See the entire state apparatus of the Irish Republic, for instance. One of my favorite examples is a group called Women Connect First. The group aims to empower Black and minority ethnic women in Cardiff and Southeast Wales. In a news post titled Politicians' Racism, which is misspelled, the organization boasts about sending its director, Maria Mesa, to a discussion in the Welsh Parliament about the political changes that the city of Cardiff and its inhabitants need. WCF also seems to be very committed to holding meetings with politicians to talk about how important their work is, and of course, how the government must give them more money to basically say the same thing over and over again. And money they shall receive. As the Charity Commission database shows, while the WCF gets funding from a handful of parastatals, in 2020, half of the organization's funds came from a £150,000 grant from the Welsh Government's Healthy Active Fund for what seems to be for a project to ensure BAME women in Wales get the exercise they need and eat fruit and vegetables, with the lack thereof presumably being down to unjust structural inequality. Well, I could go on and on. Hopefully by now it should be clear how deep and filthy the swamp is. If we want to have a shot at changing society, our goal must be to seize the state apparatus and use it to destroy this third sector. The easiest way would be to ban every single charity in existence and then selectively allow for soup kitchens and the like to be founded, which could all be shut immediately at the executive whim of the new regime. But the charities need to be shut down and the foundations expropriated and banned. This is necessary for any serious change to be possible. To do anything otherwise means to have a ready-made opposition primed to destroy us and reassert their fetid kingdom of lies. The regime insists on calling these charitable entities civil society, but all you have to do is read about civil society in Belgrade or Bangkok, and you quickly realize it's quite clearly the same class of professional activists running about, usually with the blessing of various foreign embassies of countries who are themselves more comprehensively captured by the same occupational class. It's all nonsense. People need to understand how this corrupt system works. We need to get to a point where when normies see talking heads from charitable bodies, they roll their eyes and sarcastically ask who is funding them. We need 1980s in the Soviet Union tier cynicism. We need to make sure people start seeing these charities and the people who run them for what and who they are. Sacks of money left at the random whim of decrepit billionaires and flung about by random activists. Our enemy is unaccountable dark money spreading fake news. Why do we allow this? Again, this is by John Smoke, a pseudonym, an essay called The Charity Industrial Complex, which is at a site im1776.com. So let's have a final look at the chat. Nobody has any interest in anything before 2012. I have done the Inquisition, Indian Wars, secret Jews, witches, demonic possession, toad men, and nothing interests them, says Professor Paul. Even the gifted students don't like history, asked British American. Professor Paul adds, I will testify against Deborah Lipstadt for just expenses. Her denial of Stalin's genocides is truly abhorrent. Wasn't she involved in a famous defamation case? David Irving? You know what they say, sue in haste, repent at leisure. Deborah Lipstadt testified at the Charlottesville trial. Yes, of course. The similarities. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we get it. Professor Paul says no gay people in Kyrgyzstan. Is Tom Cruise gay? That's been the rumor. I don't believe that he is actually. That fellow, what's his name? Bronson Pinchot, who played Balky on that sitcom back in the day. He, of course, was in Risky Business, which was Tom Cruise's breakthrough role. And he recalls, he said this quite some years ago, that Tom Cruise once said to him that above all, he hates two things, ice cream and homosexuals. And I thought, who hates ice cream? Professor Paul says, I've been teaching middle school since September. One day I thought I was going to have a heart attack. John Travolta, yeah, that's the rumors are almost certainly true. Almost certainly so. Making Bond black would be an act of cultural vandalism. No, they're never going to do that. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Tom Anderson says, I hope the next Bond is black solely because it will make Richard Spencer cry. I don't know. Maybe they could have alternative James Bonds, you know. But no, the Asian market is not going to buy in. Not going to buy in if James Bond is black. Has anyone seen Eternals? I heard it was bad, said Chad Chanson, our valiant moderator. Thank you for your service. I only see the recaps, which are often lengthy, on Red Letter Media, and of course the hilarious ones at Ryan George's pitch meetings. And the plot of Eternals. How come the Eternals didn't intervene to stop that thing that happened when the giant stone man in that MCU movie went and killed all the superheroes? Well, no. You see, the Eternals don't intervene in human history. Well, why not? How about stopping evil, stopping genocide? Yeah, but you see, that would just lead to more technology, which is bad. Yeah, the movie actually says this. I'm not reviewing the Eternals. I am not. No, I'm not. You'll get more than 50 Marvel movies and you'll be happy, says Halper. British American says Daniel Craig was the worst Bond ever. Too short, too blonde, too thuggish. Yes, thuggish. That's James Bond. Not thuggish. I mean, Sean Connery is certainly not my idea. Or, the creators, Ian Fleming's idea of James Bond. Of course, the director of the first movie and maybe some of the later ones, Terrence, I can't remember his name. He gave him elegance lessons, But Daniel Craig just looks like a bruiser, and yes, he is too short. Pelcasso 88 says, I had to take a 50-minute bus ride today. I was the only passenger on the bus for 30 minutes. I had to wear a mask the entire trip. When I was living in my late father's condo in Surrey, I went to downtown Vancouver, which is 25 miles away. You get there by SkyTrain. And I had to wear a mask, the whole way. And, near the end, I was beginning to panic or thinking that I was suffocating. I keep seeing people wearing masks. Are we in a pandemic? Asked Texas Feral Hog. Okay. Oh, what Richard Spencer on Kyle Rittenhouse? Does he have some wisdom for us? Media Hits says, thankful the Teddy Roosevelt statue is being moved to North Dakota. My Trail of Disgrace says, it seems that whenever Spencer is not at the center of things, he becomes petulant. He hasn't been at the center of anything since, 2017 or even earlier. Terrence Young, says Palp Caswady. Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. The Chinese displayed different movie posters from those in the West, movie posters where the black characters were edited out. Yes, that one of those terrible recent Star Wars movies with John Boyega in it. Yeah, they edited him right out. And so let me tell you what is coming up on the KMG show. Tomorrow is Theater Thursday, and I'm going to be discussing Leo McCarey's 1957 film, An Affair to Remember. On December the 2nd, Ford versus Ferrari, James Mangold from 2019. December the 9th, Gillo Pontecorvo's Capo from 1946. And then I'm going to, for 3 weeks, I'm going to have do movies associated or things associated with Christmas, because I've discovered there's not much out there about the Nativity. So Ernest Lubitsch's classic from 1940, The Shop Around the Corner. On December 23rd, I'm going to be discussing the SCTV Christmas special from 1981, which is the greatest 60 minutes of television ever created. And on December the 30th, I'm going to talk about The Great Escape from 1963, which is the traditional English Christmas Day movie, strange as that might sound. On the book club on Friday, I'm going to be talking about Patrick Radden Keefe's Empire of Pain on December the 3rd, Jacques Barzun's From Dawn to Decadence on December the 10th, a novel by Teresa Waugh called Waterloo, Waterloo. On December the 17th, Amy Chua's Political Tribes. On December the 24th, Christmas Eve, I will read Willa Cather's short story, The Burglar's Christmas. On Music Monday, on November 29th, I'm going to be discussing Mark E. Smith and The Fall. On December the 6th, Kurt Weill from Berlin to New York. December 13th, I'm going to be discussing the Beatles' last album, Let It Be. It wasn't really their last album, but it came out last. And on December the 20th, I'll be talking about Bob Stanley of Saint Etienne, his book, Yeah, 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 the story of modern pop. So that is it for today. I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all for tuning in, and I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving, a soy-free Thanksgiving. And if you would like to make a donation to this live stream, which would be very much appreciated at this time, because I desperately want to get out of this hotel room. I'm coming up on, oh, yes, it's over 11 months that I have been in this hotel room. I desperately want to get out by New Year's, get a place of my own, far from this hellhole of downtown Vancouver. My PayPal account is linked to Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. Once again, Kevin_Grace@hotmail.com. If you are in Canada, donations to the live stream may be made directly via Interac at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And as always, I leave you with this: in these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear viewers and listeners, manage to forge a genuine human connection in order to ease the burden. Good night.